There's a number sitting in a drawer in a home outside Tokyo that no one outside that family has ever seen. Never posted, never mentioned at a dinner party, never once used to impress anyone. 3 generations of women wrote it down by hand every single night for over 100 years. 2 years ago, I was the woman not writing anything down. I opened my banking app for the 12th time that week, not to check the balance, but to avoid it. 6 years of steady paychecks. Almost nothing to show for it. The math didn't add up, and worse, I couldn't even tell you where the money had gone. What I found instead was a habit older than my grandmother. A quiet, almost invisible discipline practiced in homes where nobody brags, nobody flexes, nobody explains their wealth, because in that culture, silence is the flex. While one country built an entire economy on being seen spending, the other built fortunes on never being seen at all. I didn't get a raise. I didn't start a side hustle. I didn't cut out coffee or cancel every subscription in a fit of January discipline that dies by March. I changed something underneath all of that, something so small it felt almost embarrassing to try. What happened over the next 12 months broke every assumption I had about what it takes to build wealth on an ordinary income. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why a $3 notebook can outperform every finance app on your phone. But we're not there yet. First, you need the 10 habits that made it possible. And the very first one is going to make you rethink every purchase you've made this week. If you've ever felt like you earn enough money, but somehow never have enough money, this video was built for that exact feeling. Not with another budgeting app, not with another 50-page spreadsheet, but with 10 habits pulled from a culture that treats wealth completely differently than we do here in the United States. I'm Megan Carter, and on this channel, we don't do hype. We don't do get rich by Friday. We look at the quiet, almost boring systems that actually work, the ones nobody's selling you because there's nothing to sell. A notebook, a word, a shift in how you see a scratch on your kitchen table. Japan has a phrase, tsutsumashi, living modestly, on purpose, as a form of quiet respect rather than a sign of struggle. That single idea alone reshapes how you'll look at your bank account by the end of this video. And these aren't abstract philosophies. Every habit in this list comes with real numbers, real math, and a real way to apply it starting this week, whether you make $40,000 a year or $140,000. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. Comment below and tell me, what country and what city are you watching from right now? I read every single one, and I want to see just how far this reaches, because money habits shouldn't have borders. And if you're the kind of person who'd rather build wealth quietly than spend loudly, hit subscribe now, because this channel is going to become your library for exactly that kind of thinking. Give this video a like if you're ready to rethink what enough actually means. Now, habit number 1. In 1904, a woman named Hani Motoko, Japan's first female journalist, published a household ledger system called Kakebo. At a time when Japanese women had almost no financial autonomy of their own, she built it around 4 numbers, written by hand: what comes in, what's fixed, what you want to save, and what's left to live on. Then, every night, you write down what you spent and sort it into one of 4 buckets: needs, wants, culture, and unexpected. That's the entire system. No app, no algorithm, just a notebook that's now outlived every budgeting trend of the last 100 years. Here's why it still works. Tapping a card triggers almost no cognitive response in your brain. The transaction is instant and forgettable. Writing $38 wants delivery app by hand forces your brain to actually own the decision. That's not a metaphor. Behavioral economists call it cognitive friction. And friction is exactly what modern spending has been engineered to remove. Tap to pay, one-click checkout, auto renewals everywhere. The stakes are real. As of early 2026, the U.S. personal savings rate has been sitting between roughly 3% and 4.5% of disposable income, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, well under half the long-run historical average of 8.4% going back to 1959. A viewer of mine, Priya, A nurse in Austin tried Kakebo after 3 different budgeting apps, had each lasted about 3 weeks before she quietly deleted them. The apps made me feel like I was watching my own spending happen to someone else, she told me. 6 weeks into writing it by hand, she started pausing mid-scroll on food delivery apps, mentally asking herself if she'd actually write the purchase down that night. If the answer was no, she closed the app. Her discretionary spending dropped by roughly $310 in that first month, from a $3 notebook, not a $12-a-month subscription. Kakebo doesn't fix your savings rate with a new app. It fixes it by making your own hand the accountability partner your phone was never going to be. Mottainai has no clean English translation. It's the gut-level discomfort the Japanese feel when something useful, food, fabric, time, money, is wasted or discarded before it's used up. It's not, that's their choice. It's closer to what a waste, said with real weight behind it. America runs on the opposite instinct. The USDA estimates that 30 to 40% of the entire U.S. food supply goes to waste, and a family of 4 loses roughly $1,500 a year in uneaten food alone. On top of food, we replace phones every 2 to 3 years on devices engineered to last longer, and we treat slightly used furniture as landfill material the moment we move. Mottainai flips that instinct. You repair before you replace. You finish what you have before buying the next version. There's a related tradition, kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer so the crack becomes part of the object's story instead of a reason to throw it away. I tested this on myself before I ever put it in a video. For 1 week, I photographed everything I threw out of my own fridge. Half a bag of spinach, forgotten leftover rice, a quarter of a rotisserie chicken I swore I'd eat tomorrow. It came out to roughly $38 in a single week, which tracks almost exactly with the USDA's estimate that a family of 4 loses about $1,500 a year to food that's simply never eaten. I started meal planning around what I already owned instead of what sounded good at 6 p.m. and freezing leftovers the same day instead of promising myself I'd get to them. My grocery bill dropped by close to 30% inside 3 months. Not because I ate less, because I wasted less. That's Mottainai, the slightly worn coat, the slightly outdated phone, the half-used bag of spinach. It still has value, and Mottainai trains you to actually see it before you throw it away. Harahachibu comes out of Confucian teaching and is practiced widely in Okinawa, one of the regions with the highest concentration of centenarians on Earth. The instruction is simple. Stop eating when you're about 80% satisfied, not 100% full. Translate that principle past food, and it becomes a financial philosophy of enough. You don't fill your income to 100% capacity. You leave 20% of it completely untouched, not because you're depriving yourself, but because that margin is where financial resilience actually lives. Do the math on that gap. The U.S. savings rate has hovered near 3 to 4% this year. Harahachibu's cultural target is roughly 20%. On a $60,000 salary, that's the difference between saving about $1,800 to $2,400 a year and saving $12,000. Run that gap over 30 years at an 8% average annual return, contributing that amount every year. And you're comparing a retirement account around $270,000 to one closing in on $1.36 million. Same income, same years worked, different ceiling on what you let yourself spend. A woman named Jordan, who works in logistics outside Seattle, ran this experiment for 18 months. She calculated 80% of her take-home pay, about $3,600 out of $4,500, and built her entire spending life around that boundary, treating the remaining $900 as if it simply didn't exist in her checking account. It went straight into a high-yield savings account and a Roth IRA instead. In 18 months, she'd saved and invested just over $16,000. She told me the hardest part wasn't cutting the spending. It was retraining her brain to see 80% as abundant instead of restrictive. Once that flipped, the rest stopped feeling like sacrifice. Toyota made Kaizen famous as a manufacturing philosophy, continuous tiny improvement instead of one dramatic overhaul. In Japanese daily life, it applies to everything, including money. Applied to your finances, Kaizen looks almost insultingly small. Cut dining out spending by 10%, not 50%, this month. Bump your retirement contribution by 1% next month. Cancel one subscription the month after. Negotiate one bill. Swap one name brand product for the generic. There's real neuroscience behind why this beats a dramatic January overhaul. Large, sudden changes trigger the amygdala, your brain's threat detection system, which is exactly why most aggressive New Year budgets are abandoned by March. 1% changes fly under that radar entirely. They don't feel like a threat, so they don't get fought. Rosa, a teacher in Phoenix who commented on one of my earlier videos, told me she'd tried zero-based budgeting every January for 4 years straight and quit every single time by month 2. In 2025, she tried Kaizen instead. Month 1, dining out down 10%. Month 2, retirement contribution up 1%. Month 3, one subscription canceled. Month 4, her internet bill renegotiated, down $22. None of it felt like deprivation in the moment. A year later, her savings rate had gone from 4% to just over 17%, and she told me she genuinely couldn't point to the week it happened. It just accumulated, quietly, exactly the way Kaizen is designed to. Ikigai roughly translates to reason for being. In the West, it's been repackaged as a career framework. The overlap of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you're paid for. In Japan, it's broader than a job. It's the purpose that structures an ordinary day, cooking for family, tending a garden, maintaining your health into old age. Apply Ikigai to money, and it answers the one question no budgeting app ever asks. What is this money actually for? Most people save because they're supposed to and spend because something looked appealing in the moment. There's no underlying philosophy connecting the two. A friend of mine, Devin, defined his Ikigai as being financially present for his father's final years without resentment or panic about the cost. No debt, no scrambling, just showing up. Once he had that clarity, an impulse purchase stopped being a small treat and started feeling like an obstacle standing between him and the actual reason he was earning money at all. He didn't need more willpower to stop buying things he didn't need. He needed a reason big enough to make the purchase feel irrelevant by comparison, and once he had it, the impulse buying mostly took care of itself. Wabi-Sabi is the appreciation of things that are imperfect, impermanent, incomplete, a cracked bowl that still holds soup, a table scratched by 20 years of family dinners. American consumer culture runs on the opposite logic. Scratch on your phone screen, new phone, scuffed shoes, new shoes. The entire retail economy depends on your dissatisfaction with things that still work. Wabi-Sabi is a direct, quiet rebellion against that. Emily, a follower from Portland, kept the same couch through 3 apartment moves and a decade of, I should really replace this. According to the BLS Consumer Expenditure Survey, the average American household spends about $2,000 a year on apparel and roughly $650 a year on furniture. Call it $2,650 combined, much of it driven by dissatisfaction rather than actual need. Emily cut that category by about a quarter, simply by asking, before every purchase, does the old one still work? That's roughly $660 a year redirected instead of spent. Invested at an 8% average annual return for 25 years, $660 a year compounds to just under $48,500, built entirely from a couch she decided was still good enough, not from a raise she never asked for. At the end of each year, Japanese households perform osori, a total, intentional deep clean of the home, discarding what no longer serves before the new year begins. It's not spring cleaning, it's a ritual of letting go. Apply that to money once a year. December or January works well, and you get a full financial audit. Every subscription, every recurring charge, every insurance policy, every account you forgot you opened. You review it all, cancel what isn't serving you, and renegotiate what can be lowered. My first financial Osoji, I sat down with every bank and card statement from the year, and found just over $300 a month in charges I'd completely forgotten I was paying for. A fitness app I hadn't opened in a year, a duplicate cloud storage plan, an insurance add-on from a policy I'd since switched. That's close to $3,700 a year that had been quietly draining out of my account while I wasn't looking. Most people set up their financial life once and never revisit it, which is exactly how small, forgotten charges compound into a real leak, year after year, without anyone ever noticing. Chokin means savings, but culturally it represents a sequence. Save the moment money arrives, then spend whatever's left. Not the other way around. The typical American pattern is earn, spend. Hope something's left over. Chokin is earn, save, then spend the remainder. This isn't a semantic difference. It's structural. When saving happens last, spending naturally expands to consume all of it. That's Parkinson's law applied to money instead of time. When saving happens first, spending has no choice but to shrink to fit what's left. In the US, the practical version of Chokin is automating a transfer to hit your savings or investment account the day after your paycheck lands, before you ever see the number in checking. Here's what that looks like in real dollars. Tyler, who works in facilities management in Chicago, takes home about $4,800 a month. Under the spend first, save whatever's left model, almost nothing was ever left. His savings rate hovered around 3%, roughly $144 a month, and most of that only existed because his 401k took a cut before he ever saw his paycheck. When he switched to Chokin, an automatic transfer moved 20%, about $960, into his 401k, a Roth IRA, and a high-yield savings account the morning after each payday. He adjusted his spending to the remaining $3,240 within about 2 months. After 1 year, he'd saved and invested roughly $11,500 compared to the $1,700 or so his old approach would have produced. Over 20 years at an 8% average annual return, contributing that same amount every year, that single change in sequence, save first, spend second, is the difference between roughly $79,000 and $527,000. It's also part of why credit card debt behaves so differently in the two countries. Total U.S. credit card debt sat at roughly $1.25 trillion in early 2026, with average balances around $6,700 per cardholder, carrying interest near 21% APR, according to the New York Fed and TransUnion. In Japan, carrying a revolving credit card balance month to month is culturally unusual. Most cards are set to auto-pay the statement balance in full by default. Save first, and there's rarely a balance left to revolve. Shinrin-Yoku literally means forest bathing. Quiet, unhurried time in nature as restoration, not exercise, not content, not a step count. It costs nothing, and that's the whole point. In the US, leisure and spending have become nearly synonymous. A night out, a shopping trip framed as treating yourself, a weekend built around a reservation. Japanese daily life offers a different default. Walking, cooking with people you love, reading, tending a garden, visiting a park or a temple. None of it requires a transaction. Rebuilding even one weekend day a week around activities that cost nothing doesn't just protect your bank account. For most people who try it, it quietly becomes the more restorative day of the two. The last habit is the one that holds all 9 others together. Hansei is sincere, non-punishing self-reflection. Not guilt, not self-criticism. Japanese schoolchildren practice it from an early age. You reflect not because you failed, but because reflection is how anything improves. Applied to money, Hansei is the short monthly review that closes the Kakebo loop. What did I spend? What did I save? And what would I do differently? Asked without judgment. This is the habit that makes the other 9 compound instead of stay static. Mottainai gets sharper because you actually notice the waste. Harahachibu gets easier because you can see exactly where you overfilled. Kaizen gets direction because you know what the next 1% improvement should be. Without Hansei, the rest of this list is just information. With it, it's a system. None of these 10 habits, on their own, sound like a wealth-building strategy. A $3 notebook. 20% of your plate left empty. Finding something worth keeping in a scratched table, but stacked on top of each other and repeated for a year, then 5 years, then 20. They produce something no income level can produce by itself. If this gave you even one idea you're going to try this week, tell me which habit it was in the comments. And don't forget to drop your country and city so I can see exactly where this is landing. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thinking, and I'll see you in the next one.